Hello everyone, welcome back to another AFL Club by Club draft analysis video. In this video we're going to be looking at the Western Bulldogs and their draft hand for the 2024 AFL Draft. And in this year's draft they've got picks 17, 25, 35 and 48. So a lot to work with there, and in a team that has a lot of potential still. They've made the top 8 this year and they've proven they can contend every year. And for a draft hand like that, there's a lot of potential there. I'll throw it to you first, Dylan, in terms of what do you reckon the Dogs' main need is? Who do they target with that first pick? Is there any potential of them trading up in this draft? So what do you see the Dogs
it's interesting,
doing?
Isn't it? Like, they're sort of doing a bit of a mini rebuild on the run. Like, Daniel's gone out, McRae's gone out, Bailey Smith, obviously a young player that they wouldn't have wanted to lose. You could add sort of midfield depth, somebody to come in and just create a bit more quality in the midfield. But I think what they did last year, one of the probably key moves that they made was Ed Richards off half back, added a little bit more weaponry into that midfield, a little bit more drive. Do they look for someone that can sort of fulfill that role? I mean, with pick 17, I think they'll be struggling to get someone like a Travalia. I think that's probably too far. I think that'd be a player that they would love to get their hands on. I then think in the forward half of the ground, do they get given they are a little bit oversized with the tools that they play, you've got Waitman, who's also an aerial player and a ground level player. Could you get that pressure guy? Could you get an Ollie Hannaford? I know we've brought him up in a lot of these videos. He seems to be the player that everybody needs. Got that athleticism to tackle and a lot of speed as well. Jesse Detoli's the other one. Maybe that's a bit too high for him.
Yeah. I think from my point of view, I think with that first pick, there's a lot of small forwards in that sort of region after that.
Joe Berry.
That upper echelon. And I'm going to go with, Joe Berry. You need a crummer. They've got so many tools as we know. We've seen them throughout this year. So whoever is the best remaining small forward on the draft board is who I'd be taking. So Joe Berry's obviously able to get up, but he's obviously really clean at ground level as well. And Taj Houghton has that athleticism. So someone who can hit the scoreboard and isn't so much an aerial threat or doesn't need to be an aerial threat. Both of those are good players overhead, but I think you immediately think of both of them as having ground level games
For sure.
Like you said, Cody Waitman is a 50-50 player, even though he is a small forward. So I think that's the first thing I'd be doing. Then at 25 and 35, the area of the ground that I'd be targeting are all outside players / halfbacks, as we've sort of touched on, that can then graduate into the midfield and partner Riley Sanders in 3 or 4 years' time. So I think all of the above players that I'm about to mention will start on the outside, can have impact next year, but will eventually go potentially as an inside midfielder. So Christian Moraes, I think, is someone around that mark. If Xavier Lindsay was to fall to around 25, he'd be a steal and you'd want him. Jack Au is another one that I think would start on the outside, could go inside. And I'm going to throw Harrison Oliver into this mix. Does he go into the midfield? Perhaps he doesn't deepen the midfield as much, but I think as a distributor off half-back, he gives them exactly what they need.
I 100% agree. And I think another player that we discussed when we talked about Port Adelaide, I think Angus Clark would be another one to throw into this mix. The thing that he would give you a little bit more than a Harrison Oliver is that aerial game. Being closer to 190, he has that as well as the drive. Maybe as far as his ball use goes, not in the same realm as Harrison Oliver. Do you think you could play Oliver? We've seen him mostly at half back for Metro and for the Dragons. Could he play on a wing?
Yeah, he could play on a wing, I think. Yep, definitely.
I think he's got the disposal as well to be efficient in that role. It's hard to back up. I'm not kidding you, I had literally the same identical players, the Moraes, Oliver, Angus Clark. So we've kind of covered that conversation well. If they were to trade, let me just rebut kind of what you've said, not rebut, but kind of question. Joe Berry, he's gone by pick 17. Who are you looking towards next? Because I have him in pick 15, number 15 in my power ranking. So in the theoretical, he goes at pick 15. What would you say the Dogs need to do then? Do they look to someone like a Jesse Detoli even in that instance? Is that because you said that's too high for him, but where do you say, no, that's good enough?
Yeah, I think your first preference is Joe Berry, your second preference is Taj Houghton. If they're both off the board, then you look at someone like a Jesse Detoli, Tom Gross or Ollie Hannaford. I think they all fit well. I think the number one skill you need for the Dogs is someone who's really clean and clinical at ground level, which is why I've gone for those players over, or those players above the Gross and Hannaford. That's why I've preferenced those two. But certainly if Gross or Hannaford fell, they're both clean at ground level and they offer something else as well. But I certainly think they need some electricity in the forward half to complement that talent. The other player I wouldn't mind them bringing in at pick 48 that would definitely deepen the midfield, and he's a player that could come in straight away and he could surprise some people. Cooper Craig Peters, a young player out of the Footscray Bulldogs, he's averaged more than 25 disposals this year and has been a real revelation. I think he's someone who could graduate. We've seen a few players come out of the Footscray VFL program, and it's becoming something that clubs are looking to do a little bit more than in previous years. I think he's a prototypical ball-winning midfielder, so I think he could come in and add a little bit of depth there.
If we look at the pieces to that midfield currently, you've got obviously Bontempelli is an absolute star, just does everything. Treloar's there, Libba's there. They're probably the two that are aging out the most.
Yeah.
And then you've got Sanders. Would you say that Sanders is probably going to play that Libba role? Or more of a Treloar role?
I think, I'd liken him more to the Treloar. I think, the defensive side of the game. I think he's more of an offensive sort of clearance winner, ball winner.
I'm just thinking about the types that they might want to bring in. I think there's still room for a midfielder, potentially with 25 or 35.
Yeah, certainly.
I think from the outside as well, seems like Adam Treloar has got his arm over Riley Sanders this last year. Everything you say, I think there's a bit of a mentoring role going on there. So you'd like to think could be that type of progression plan and that they're planning for.
That's certainly the way I was looking at it, because I think in the immediate term, I look at the need of having someone on the outside.
Yeah.
Obviously, the loss of Bailey Smith and some other areas they were already, I guess, a little bit low on in terms of depth. But then those players I mentioned, like your Jack Hours, all have the capability later in their careers to graduate into the midfield, and will be perfect timing, I think, once Riley Sanders is ready to really lead the midfield alongside whoever it is they bring in if they were to take that route.
That about wraps it up for the Dogs and their picks for 2024. All other 17 clubs will be across our channel and Dylan's channel, so please make sure to check that out. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in another video.